Hello and welcome. Whether you're listening in the quiet hours of the night or resting in a calm moment during the day, this gentle journey invites you to step into a city settling into evening beneath gaslight and mist. Make yourself comfortable. Let your breath soften and slow. Allow the rush of the modern world to fade as we drift into the quiet nights of the Victorian era. This is Victorian-era night routines and quiet city life, a serene, reflective exploration of how evenings unfolded in a time of candles, clocks, and careful routine. Take a slow, steady breath. As you exhale, imagine narrow streets glowing softly beneath rows of gas lamps, shop windows dim, carriages roll by at an unhurried pace, their wheels echoing gently over cobblestone roads. Inside brick row houses and tall townhomes, families draw curtains, tend fires, and prepare for rest. In this peaceful retelling, there is no urgency, no disturbance, only gentle observation. We move slowly through the hours after sunset, noticing how the city softened as night approached. Picture yourself standing along a quiet Victorian street. A lamplighter makes his rounds. Footsteps fade into the distance. From behind closed doors come faint sounds of conversation, pages turning, and teacups set carefully aside. Bedrooms glow with candlelight, and the steady ticking of clocks marks the passing of time. Though you remain safely where you are, you may sense the calm rhythm of the era, a balance between industrious days and restful nights. In the chapters ahead, we'll explore nighttime routines of the Victorian era, how people prepared for sleep, how homes and cities changed after dark, and how quiet moments shaped daily life in an age before electric light. We'll move gently through these scenes, letting history unfold like a foggy evening settling over a sleeping city. For now, settle in, breathe deeply, and allow this peaceful journey into Victorian nights to begin. The sky over Victorian London deepens from dusky purple to a star-speckled navy as evening settles in. A hush begins to fall over the bustling city as shopkeepers shutter their storefronts and workers make their way home. Gas lamps line the main roads, their iron posts casting a warm yellow glow that slowly pushes back the encroaching darkness. One by one, the lamps flicker to life, little blossoms of light blooming down the winding streets. A lamplighter in a dark cap and coat strolls along the lane with a long pole in hand, touching flame to gas jets inside each lantern. At each lamp, he pauses and lifts his pole, and with a soft whoosh, the light catches. He leaves behind a trail of gentle radiance in his wake, little golden pools shimmering on the damp cobblestones. In the gathering dusk, these newly lit lamps are beacons of comfort, their steady glow guiding late passers-by and assuring residents that night has officially begun. On a quiet side street of terraced brick houses, a young seamstress named Emily watches the lamplighter through her second-floor window. She has been bent over her work since the afternoon, and the last natural light of day had faded to a dim gray in her tiny apartment. Now, the orange twinkle of the street lamp outside dances through her thin curtains, illuminating her small work table. Emily sets down her needle and thread, rolling her tired shoulders. By this hour, her eyes ache from stitching fine seams in the waning light. She pushes aside the half-finished blouse she's been sewing for a client. It can wait until morning. Right now, the soft glow on the street and the promise of a calm night beckon her to rest. Emily rises and carefully closes her shutters against the night chill. The wooden shutters, painted a peeling white, creak softly as she latches them. In doing so, she leaves the window slightly ajar for a bit of fresh air, a habit she picked up from a ladies' magazine, advising that a touch of night air keeps sickness at bay. A cool whisper of autumn breeze drifts in, carrying with it the faint smell of coal smoke from nearby chimneys and a distant hint of roasted chestnuts from a street vendor's cart. It's a comforting aroma that mingles with the familiar scent of the candle burning on her table, warm wax with a tinge of lavender oil from the dab she added to sweeten her small room's atmosphere. Inside, Emily's one-room dwelling is humble but tidy. Against one wall stands a narrow bed topped with a neatly smoothed patchwork quilt. Beside it sits a washstand holding a porcelain basin and a pitcher of water. A modest oak chest of drawers doubles as her dining table and desk, and on it stands the solitary candle in its brass holder, the flame quivering gently each time the night breeze slips in. In the tiny grate across the room, a few coals still glimmer from the small fire she lit to boil her kettle earlier. The residual heat is just enough to keep the autumn chill at bay. Now that darkness has fallen, Emily moves about her room, lighting two more candles, one on the mantel above the little fireplace and another on the windowsill. Their additional glow helps chase the shadows from the corners of her flat. The dancing light reveals the simple comforts she has gathered: a well-worn armchair with a crocheted blanket draped over the back, a shelf with a handful of books, and a pincushion shaped like a tomato perched by her sewing kit. These ordinary things take on a cozy golden hue in the candlelight, transforming her small apartment into a gentle refuge from the sprawling city outside. After a long day of stitching and mending garments for others, it is finally time for her own evening meal. Emily takes a chipped enamel kettle from the hearth, where it's been staying warm by the coals, and pours hot water into a waiting teapot. The fragrant scent of tea leaves unfurls, filling her corner of the world with a soothing, familiar smell. She places the teapot on the table and lays out her simple supper: a small loaf of bread, a pat of butter, and a bit of sharp cheddar cheese wrapped in paper. It's a frugal meal, but she savors it as a comfort at the end of the day. As she butters a slice of bread, the soft scrape of her knife against the crust is the loudest sound in the quiet room. Outside, the city noise has mellowed to a murmur, a distant clatter of a carriage wheel on cobbles, an echo of laughter from a far-off street where a public house might still be lively. Here on Emily's Lane, however, peace has settled. She sits in her armchair with her plate and a steaming cup of tea balanced on a small wooden tray. Taking slow, grateful sips, she gazes at the gentle glow seeping through the edges of her shutters. That glow means the street lamp outside her window is now lit. She smiles, recalling childhood evenings when her mother would declare it time to come indoors the moment the lamplighters made their rounds. Now as an adult, that same glow brings her a sense of safety. In the stillness of her solitary home, the lamplight filtering in assures her that others are nearby and that the city watches over its own through the dark. As Emily enjoys her light supper, she lets the tension of the day drain away. Her fingers, stiff from hours of fine work, wrap gratefully around the warm teacup. Each sip seems to loosen the knots in her back and soothe her mind. The rhythmic ticking of a small mantel clock is the only other sound accompanying her. It ticks unhurriedly, each swing of its pendulum marking the steady approach of night's deeper hours. Emily's eyelids feel heavy, but she resists the urge to doze just yet. There are a few small personal tasks to complete, little rituals that mark the gentle close of her day. After finishing her simple meal, she takes a moment to tidy up. The crumbs from her bread are brushed onto a plate, the knife wiped clean and set aside. Every action is unhurried and methodical, a calming routine she performs in the hush of her home. Emily pours the remaining tea into a chipped mug and sets it near the edge of the hearth to stay warm. A final half cup will be nice to drink just before bed. Then she takes up her needle and thread once more, but this time not for work. Instead, she picks a piece of pale blue fabric from her basket. By the soft candle glow, she makes a few careful stitches, adding an embroidered flower onto the corner of a handkerchief. It's a personal project, something small and lovely just for herself. With each delicate stitch, she breathes slowly, enjoying the creative act without any rush. This quiet needlework is almost meditative, a way to calm her thoughts. Her needle flashes in and out of the cloth, casting a tiny shadow on her lap. In this peaceful moment, her mind wanders gently. She thinks about the story her neighbor told her yesterday about a cat that had kittens in the laundry basket, and she smiles softly at the thought. She wonders if she might see those kittens tomorrow. Down on the street, the lamplighter's steady footfalls fade into the distance as he continues lighting lamps further along. In the dim quiet of the neighborhood, a new set of sounds emerges. Emily can hear the faint clopping of a horse pulling a carriage on a nearby main road, and the far-off whistle of a night watchman making his rounds. These sounds are all familiar parts of the city's nocturne. They blend into a kind of lullaby for those winding down after the day. Emily's breathing slows as she concentrates on her stitches and listens. The city is large and full of energy by day, but at night like this, it becomes a collection of small, private worlds, each home glowing with its own lamplight, each family or solitary soul engaged in their quiet evening rites. When the embroidered flower on the handkerchief is finished, Emily holds it up to admire the tiny piece of beauty she's created in the amber light. Satisfied, she sets her sewing aside for the final time today and cleans up her work area. The spool of thread is returned to her wooden sewing box, the needle carefully stuck into the pincushion. She folds the handkerchief neatly and tucks it into a drawer with a faint smile. It will be nice to have something pretty of her own amidst all the garments she sews for others. At last, her duties and small pleasures for the evening complete, she turns to the washstand to begin her nightly toilette. From the pitcher on the stand, Emily pours cool water into the porcelain basin. The water splashes gently, reflecting the candlelight in ripples. She removes the simple pins from her brown hair, letting the day's tight bun unfurl past her shoulders in a soft braid. With a long wooden brush, she strokes through her hair, 1, 2, 100 strokes in all, as she was taught to do for healthy locks. Each brushstroke is slow and deliberate. By the time she's finished, her scalp tingles pleasantly, and her hair shines in the candle's glow, She then takes a washcloth and dips it into the basin. The water is cool on her skin as she washes her face, neck, and hands, wiping away the fine dust of fabric lint and the perspiration of a long day's work. She imagines the worries of the day being washed away too, drip by drip into the basin. There is no full bath tonight. Drawing a bath is a rare luxury reserved for nights before church or special occasions, since it requires hauling heavy buckets of hot water. Instead, this gentle sponge bath freshens her before bed. She dabs a bit of lavender-scented soap on her wrists and behind her ears, enjoying the clean, calming fragrance that lingers. After patting her skin dry with a small towel, Emily changes into her night attire. Hanging on a peg by her bed is a cotton nightgown, white and flowy. She lifts it off and slips it over her head. The fabric is soft from many washings and loose, allowing her room to breathe after a day spent corseted tightly in her work dress. She lets out a contented sigh as she ties the nightgown's ribbon neckline snugly. Next, she takes a moment to fold her day clothes, a plain gray dress and apron, and drapes them over the back of the chair, ready to don again at dawn. Before settling into bed, Emily allows herself a moment of reflection. She opens a small wooden keepsake box on her dresser and takes out a well-creased letter from her mother, sent from the countryside a month ago. Though she knows its contents by heart, she runs her fingers over the neat handwriting and envisions her family home far away, a snug cottage where her parents and siblings must be preparing for bed under the same night sky. The thought warms her. Despite being alone in the city, she feels an invisible thread connecting her to loved ones across the distance. With a contented smile, she returns the cherished letter to its box. Now, she tends to the last of her tasks. From the mantel, she picks up a small tin container where she keeps her tooth powder, sprinkling a bit of the chalky, minty powder onto her moistened toothbrush, made of boar bristles set in wood. She carefully cleans her teeth. This is another habit she learned from a lady's journal. Good dental hygiene will keep away toothaches that could plague her workdays. She spits the residue discreetly into the basin and rinses her mouth with a sip of water. Now truly ready for rest, Emily pours the used wash water out of the basin into a bucket. She'll empty outside tomorrow. The night's chill creeping in through the cracked window makes her shiver slightly. She crosses to the fireplace and, with the iron poker, gently stirs the last orange embers, hoping to coax a bit more warmth into the room. They glow and crackle faintly, but she knows they will fade to ash soon. In a practiced motion, she takes a small ceramic bed warmer, essentially a stopper-topped bottle, and fills it with hot water from the kettle that still sits on the hearth. The kettle's water is lukewarm now, but better than cold. She wraps the bottle in a scrap of flannel and tucks it into her bed under the covers, right near where her feet will go. The makeshift warmer will take the worst of the chill off the sheets. Finally, Emily crawls into bed. She slides her tired legs between the cool sheets and draws the heavy patchwork quilt up to her chin. The bed creaks softly beneath her slight weight. She reaches over to the side table and takes one last sip of her now lukewarm tea from the mug she left there. The taste of the brew, though a bit stewed and strong by now, is still comforting. Setting the mug down, she closes her eyes for a moment, just listening. In the distance, a clock tower tolls softly, 8 gentle chimes drifting over the rooftops, marking the hour. Already, Emily can feel the pull of sleep on her body. But before she blows out the last candle, she whispers a quiet nightly prayer learned in childhood. Now I lay me down to sleep. The familiar words spoken aloud in the empty room make her feel less alone. She asks for pleasant dreams and the health of those she loves, then opens her eyes and smiles to herself. Under her bed, she knows, a humble ceramic chamber pot sits tucked away for convenience, just in case it's needed before morning. One of those mundane but necessary items of nightly life that every household keeps close. Reaching up, she gently extinguishes the candle flame with a quick pinch of wetted fingers. The room plunges into near darkness, lit only by the faint orange glow of the remaining coals and a thin beam of street lamp light that sneaks past the shutters. Through the thin wall, she hears a neighbor softly humming a lullaby, a gentle, quavering melody that drifts into her room and mingles with the darkness. The sound is muffled and fades after a minute, but even that brief human song in the night comforts Emily, reminding her that others nearby are winding down in peace as well. Outside, the city is quiet now, apart from a distant cat's mewling and the ever-present lullaby of London's night breeze brushing through alleyways. In her cozy bed, Emily feels gratitude for the day's end. Her small world is safe and sound. The last thing she notices as she drifts off is that comforting glow from the street lamp outside, shining steadily like a guardian. It casts a faint golden square on the ceiling above, a reassurance that though the night is dark, she is not alone. With that gentle thought easing her mind, Emily slips into sleep, the quilt pulled up under her chin and the city's night holding her in its quiet embrace. While Emily drifts into slumber in her little room, elsewhere in the city, a young man named Thomas makes his way home through the quieting streets. Thomas is an apprentice typesetter at a small print shop off Fleet Street. The shop's windows are now dark, and the heavy press machines have fallen silent after a long day's clatter. It is well past sunset when Thomas steps out of the workshop, locking the wooden door behind him with a large brass key. The air outside is crisp and cool against his warm face, still flushed from the heat of the printing room and the labor of lifting stacks of paper and type. He pauses a moment under the gaslight by the shop's doorway, rubbing ink-stained fingers together. In the soft glow, he can see the black ink smudges that even a thorough scrubbing at the shop's cold water pump didn't remove entirely. He'll have to wash them again at home, but for now he doesn't mind. The smell of printer's ink and paper still clings to his clothes, a familiar, oddly comforting scent that mixes here on the street with the autumn air and traces of chimney smoke. Thomas starts his walk home, grateful to stretch his legs after hours hunched over the printing press. The city around him is transitioning from the bustle of day to the calm of night. Along the main road, most shopkeepers have already shuttered their businesses. He paces a greengrocer's stall where earlier produce was piled high. Now the proprietor pulls down the canvas awning and gathers the last unsold cabbages and potatoes into crates. The man gives Thomas a tired nod as he secures the stand for the night, and Thomas nods back politely. Further along, a bookseller's shop window still glows with oil lamp light as the owner tallies the day's earnings inside, but moments later, that lamp is dimmed and the shop window goes dark. Thomas catches a final glimpse of the bookseller locking the door and carrying his lamp up the narrow staircase to his private quarters above the shop. The routine is a common one in these rows of businesses: shop below, home above. As each shop closes, a rectangle of light appears in an upstairs window soon after, where the shopkeeper and family now retire for the evening. The route to Thomas's lodging takes him along a busy thoroughfare for a time before veering into quieter lanes. On the larger street, a few establishments remain lively, the warm golden light and chatter spilling out of a public house door as a patron exits, and the clatter of hooves as a late omnibus rattles by, carrying passengers perched atop. Thomas steps aside to let the omnibus pass, its large wheels splashing through a shallow puddle from an earlier drizzle. The driver calls out a friendly "good night, lad," recognizing Thomas as a regular passerby, and Thomas raises a hand in return. He considers for a moment the inviting sound of jovial voices from the pub at the corner. Some of his fellow apprentices and other young factory lads from the nearby works often stop in for a pint to unwind. He can imagine a cluster of them inside now, caps pushed back as they exchange jokes over their ales. But tonight, Thomas feels drawn to the quiet of home. He's tired, and the thought of a peaceful corner and perhaps a few pages of his favorite book sounds more appealing than the smoky, noisy tavern atmosphere. So he continues on, crossing the street away from the pub's glow and into a side alley that will lead him toward his neighborhood. Down this side street, the character of the city shifts. The sounds of merriment and the clanging of tram cars fade, replaced by a softer soundscape. His boots tap against the cobblestones in a steady rhythm. Somewhere in the distance, a street vendor calls out one last time, "Hot potato, get your hot potato," her voice echoing between the tall rows of buildings. The aroma of something baked and warm wafts temptingly through the cool air. Feeling his stomach rumble, Thomas fishes in his pocket and finds a penny. As he rounds the corner, he sees the vendor, an elderly woman with a pushcart, a small lantern hanging from its handle, illuminating a basket full of roasted potatoes kept warm in a bed of coal ash. A thin wisp of steam rises each time she lifts the lid. Thomas cannot resist. He approaches with a smile and hands over his coin for one of the simple treats. The vendor grins, placing a hot, foil-wrapped potato into his calloused hand using a scrap of paper so he won't burn himself. He thanks her kindly and carries the little parcel with him, its heat seeping pleasantly into his palm. Walking on, Thomas eats as he goes. The potato's skin is slightly charred and sprinkled with salt, and each bite of the soft, mealy inside warms him from the inside out. It's a humble dinner, but filling enough at this hour. As he savors the last bites, he wipes his hands on a handkerchief and looks around. The street he's on now is lined with narrow brick houses and a few tiny shops. Most windows are dark, but here and there a candle or lamp glows behind curtains. Through one lace-curtained window, he glimpses a family in their parlor, an older man in a cushioned chair reading a newspaper, while a woman, perhaps his wife, quietly darns a sock by lamplight. The domestic scene is brief, but heartwarming in its ordinariness. It reminds Thomas of his own family in the countryside, whom he hasn't seen in months. He pictures his mother at this hour, likely closing up the kitchen, and his younger siblings yawning as they climb into their shared bed. The thought makes him both wistful and comforted. Though he's far from them in this vast city, the rituals of night are something they all share under the same sky. Soon, Thomas turns onto the street where his boarding house stands. It's a modest three-story townhouse, squeezed between others like it, with a faded wooden sign near the door bearing the landlady's name, Mrs. Patterson, and the words, "Rooms to Let." The house is dim from the outside, only a faint light showing through the curtained parlor window on the ground floor. Thomas quietly lets himself in through the front door, which Mrs. Patterson always leaves on latch for her tenants until a bit later in the night when she locks up. The entry hall is lit by a single oil lamp turned down low, casting a gentle glow over the worn wallpaper and a row of pegs for coats. Thomas hangs up his flat cap and scarf on an empty peg and tiptoes inward. The house has the comforting smell of old wood, coal dust, and something savory, perhaps the remnants of the stew Mrs. Patterson served her family for supper lingering in the air. From the parlor comes a muffled voice and soft laughter. The door is slightly ajar, and Thomas glimpses Mrs. Patterson herself, sitting in her rocking chair by the hearth, knitting needles in hand. Her gray cat is curled up on the rug at her feet. Across from her, one of the other lodgers, Mr. Higgins, a clerk from a nearby trading company, is reading aloud from a newspaper, likely sharing an amusing article or the day's news. Thomas hears the low rumble of Mr. Higgins's voice, and it says here that the new railway line will open by Christmas, followed by the rustle of paper and Mrs. Patterson's mildly. Is that so? Thomas smiles to himself at the cozy scene, but doesn't intrude. Mr. Higgins glances up from behind his spectacles as Thomas passes the doorway. The clerk raises his teacup in greeting. "Evening, Thomas," he says quietly. Thomas returns a polite "good evening" with a nod and continues on, heading for the narrow staircase that leads up to the upper floors where the renters' bedrooms are. The wooden stairs creak under his weight as he ascends carefully, mindful of those who might already be asleep. The first floor holds the rooms of two older gentlemen who likely have turned in by now. Sure enough, the landing is dark except for a sliver of light beneath one door, which disappears as he walks past, perhaps a candle just blown out. He continues up to the second floor, where his own small room awaits. At his door, he uses a tiny key he keeps on a string in his pocket to unlock it. The door opens with a gentle squeak. Thomas steps inside and closes it behind him, shutting out even the faintest noises from the rest of the house. His room is sparse but serviceable, about the size of a small pantry. It contains a single bed pushed against one wall, a simple wooden dresser with a wobbly leg, and a washstand by the foot of the bed. On the washstand sits a white basin and water jug, much like Emily's in her home, and next to it a stub of soap and a neatly folded flannel rag. A tiny window, high on the wall, lets in a breath of night air. It's cracked open just an inch to vent the stuffiness that can accumulate when the door is closed for hours. Thomas immediately lights the oil lamp on the dresser with a match, turning the wick down to a low, steady flame. The room's corners leap into soft illumination, chasing away shadows and revealing a scattering of personal effects. A few dog-eared books stacked on the floor beside the bed, a pair of boots set neatly under the chair, and a small trunk at the foot of the bed where he keeps his clothes and belongings. With a weary sigh, Thomas shrugs off his coat. It's a heavy twill jacket that has seen better days, stained with a little ink here and there. He hangs it on a wall peg. Next, he unbuttons his waistcoat and removes it, then loosens the collar of his shirt, breathing a little easier as the constraint is gone. The evening chill of the room nips at him through his shirt sleeves now that he's not moving around. He shivers slightly and decides to coax a bit of warmth into the space. In the corner by the tiny hearth stands a metal coal scuttle with a few lumps of coal and kindling. Mrs. Patterson allows small fires in the bedrooms on cold nights, but cautions her lodgers to be sparing. Coal is costly, and a roaring fire is hardly needed for sleeping. Thomas kneels and places 2 pieces of coal and some crumpled scrap paper into the grate, along with a dry twig or 2. Striking another match, he lights the paper and carefully nurses a small flame to life. Soon, a petite fire is burning, just enough to cast a flicker of amber light and take the edge off the damp air. As the fire crackles softly, Thomas goes about his nightly routine. He pours some fresh water from the jug into the basin. The water is cold, but he splashes his face with it anyway, letting the shock of coolness rinse away the grime and fatigue of the day. Blackish rivulets of diluted ink run down into the basin as he scrubs his hands and nails with the bit of soap, determined to come to bed clean. He takes off his shirt and uses the damp flannel to wipe his arms and torso in lieu of a full bath. The brisk rub-down leaves his skin tingling. In the corner of the room, a simple chamber pot resides discreetly beneath the bed, just as in Emily's home. He takes a moment to relieve himself into it, grateful not to have to trek to an outdoor privy on such a chilly night. That task done, he replaces the porcelain pot under the bed, out of sight but within reach, for the remainder of the night. Feeling much refreshed, Thomas changes into his nightwear. Draped over the foot of the bed is his nightshirt, a long cotton garment with narrow blue stripes. He quickly slips it on over his head. It falls to his knees, and its loose fit is a welcome change from the stiff, ink-smudged work clothes he wore all day. As he folds his trousers and shirt and sets them on the chair, he reflects for a moment on the day's accomplishments. The pages printed, the new type he set correctly without any errors. A small, proud smile tugs at his lips. Each day's work, though tiring, is another step toward mastery of his trade, and he takes quiet satisfaction in that. Now dressed for bed, with the fire casting gentle shadows on the walls, Thomas decides he has a bit of time before sleep to enjoy one of his modest pleasures, reading. From the stack of books by his bed, he picks up a well-thumbed copy of Charles Dickens' Nicholas Nickleby. It's a few years old, and he found it secondhand, but it's a treasured possession. Many nights, he reads just a couple of pages to lull his mind into a different world before rest. He props his thin pillow up against the headboard and sits on the bed, the book open on his lap. Before diving in, he reaches to the little shelf above the dresser where a candle stands and lights it from the oil lamp's flame. Then he extinguishes the lamp itself, preferring the softer glow of a single candle while he reads. It also saves oil. Candles are cheaper to replace. Leaning back, Thomas loses himself for a short while in the story's printed words. The candlelight is just enough to read by, flickering over the neat serif letters. As he turns pages slowly, the sounds of the house settle around him. Downstairs, he hears the distant clink of a teacup and the murmur of Mr. Higgins bidding Mrs. Patterson good night. A door latch clicks, likely the landlady securing the front door now that all her boarders are in or accounted for. The clock on the mantel in the parlor chimes softly. Though faint up here, Thomas counts 9 gentle chimes. 9 o'clock. In the room next door, a floorboard creaks, followed by muffled coughing. Old Mr. Fletcher clearing his throat before bed, perhaps. Then his door closes with a thud. Each little noise is part of the tapestry of boarding house life at night, and to Thomas it is reassuring. Everyone is turning in, each in their own room, under the same roof. He continues reading until he notices the words starting to swim a little on the page as his eyes grow fatigued. Realizing he has read the same sentence twice without comprehension, he chuckles quietly to himself and decides it's time to stop. He places a scrap of paper in the book to mark his spot and closes it, setting the volume back on the stack. The candle he left burning has shortened by a half-inch, and he watches the flame dance for a moment, thinking of nothing in particular, just enjoying the simple peace. Before extinguishing the light, Thomas mirrors something he saw his own father do nightly. He takes a moment to kneel by his bed for a short prayer of thanks. With the candlelight winking beside him, he bows his head. In a hushed whisper, so as not to disturb his neighbors, he speaks. "Thank you for this day and its lessons. Watch over my family back home and my friends here in the city. Grant us a quiet night and rest for tomorrow." The habit is comforting, a moment of humility and hope to end the day. Rising from his knees, Thomas gently blows out the candle. Darkness envelops the little room, broken only by the faint red glow of the coal embers in the hearth. He navigates the short step to his bed in the dark easily. He could do it with eyes closed, having lived here for over a year. Sliding under the rough wool blanket, he relaxes into the firm mattress. It's not a feather bed by any means. Beneath the blanket, he can feel the texture of the straw-filled ticking that forms the mattress, and the bed frame squeaks if he moves too suddenly. But it is his own, a small haven after a laborious day. He fluffs his pillow and settles his head. The autumn night has grown colder, and a draft slips through the tiny window crack. Thomas tugs the blanket up over his shoulders, tucking it around himself tightly. In the darkness, he lies still and allows his other senses to heighten. He listens to the dying crackle of the coal and the occasional soft pop as the last pieces crumble. The smell of the extinguished candle's wick, a little wisp of smoke with a hint of wax, mixes with the slight sooty scent of the fire and the lingering note of the roasted potato he ate earlier. These common smells and sounds are homely and soothing. As his body unwinds, Thomas's thoughts drift. He thinks of the lines of text he set in the press today, wondering how many Londoners will read those printed words in tomorrow's papers. He thinks of his family's farm and the way the night there would be utterly silent except for crickets, so different from the city's subtle, constant noise. Here, even in the quiet, there is the distant rumble of a carriage on cobbles, the far-off bark of a dog down the alley, or the faint clang from some dockside or factory a mile away. Far above, through the little window, he imagines the stars shining beyond the haze of the city's smoke. Perhaps his mother and father can see the same stars from their cottage yard. This thought is comforting, and he holds it gently as he closes his eyes. In the bed next to the wall, Thomas feels sleep coming for him quickly. He shifts once to find a comfortable spot, and then grows still. Down the hall, the last footsteps of a late returning lodger climb the stairs and then cease. A door closes softly. Now the house is truly quiet. Thomas can hear only the slow, steady sound of his own breathing, and if he concentrates, the heartbeat in his ears. He yawns. The day's work, finally, catching up with him. Before he drifts off completely, he reaches down and pats under the bed to make sure his tin alarm clock is wound for the morning. It is set to ring at 5:30, long before sunrise, so he can wash, take a bite of bread, and hurry to the print shop to start another day. Feeling the solid shape of the clock and satisfied it's ready, he pulls his arm back under the covers and cozies into the mattress. Thomas's last waking sensation is one of contentment. In this moment, he has everything he needs: a roof over him, a warm blanket, a full stomach, and honest work to look forward to when morning comes. The city outside might hold unknowns and hardships, but within the walls of this boarding house room, he is safe and at peace. His thoughts flicker to a pleasant memory, a summer evening back home, chasing fireflies with his siblings, and that gentle happiness follows him into his dreams. In minutes, Thomas is sound asleep, one arm tucked beneath his pillow. The faint glow of the last coal in the grate watches over him like a tiny red star, and the night carries on, quiet and still, in this little pocket of London. Not far from where Thomas lodges, in a neighboring working-class district, a different household settles in for the night. This one, a small family, sharing a single rented room. Up 3 flights of a narrow tenement stair, in a space that by day serves as their sitting area, and by night becomes their bedroom, the Thompson family's day is coming to a gentle close. John Thompson arrived home a little after sunset, footsore and tired, to the welcoming aroma of a simple supper his wife Mary had kept warm on the brazier. A hearty potato and leek soup, bulked out with day-old bread. In the glow of a single oil lantern, the family sat around a small crate that served as their table and shared the meal. The children, perched on their parents' laps, chattered between spoonfuls. Little William excitedly showing his father a drawing he made, and Bess insisting on reciting the alphabet she learned that day. John listened with a weary smile, grateful for these lively moments despite his fatigue. Mary gently reminded the little ones to eat every bite. Food was not to be wasted. Soon enough, stomachs were filled and the pot scraped clean. Mary set the dishes aside in a basin for washing, and John took a moment to lift each child and twirl them once in a playful hug, drawing giggles that filled their tiny home with joy. Now, as night truly falls, and the children have been washed and changed for bed, the Thompsons savor these final, quieter moments together. John Thompson works as a clerk at a shipping office by the docks. His wages are meager, but he and Mary make do to provide a loving home for their 2 young children. Their one-room flat is humble and cramped, with peeling wallpaper and a single window that rattles when the wind gusts. Yet tonight, as a faint draft slips through the ill-fitting window frame, the room is filled with a warmth and coziness money can't quite measure. In one corner of the room stands a small cast iron stove that has been cooking and heating for the family all evening. Now its fire has been reduced to low embers after heating their supper of soup and bread. The lid is closed, but a soft red glow seeps through the vents, casting patterns on the worn floorboards. By the stove's warmth, John sits in the only armchair, a wooden thing with a cushion Mary sewed for it. He has one child on each knee, 5-year-old William and 3-year-old Bess, and freshly washed and dressed in their nightshirts. The children are clean and rosy-cheeked from their quick nightly wash at the basin, a task accomplished with much giggling and splashing not long ago. Now they are calm and drowsy, leaning against their father as he holds a well-read storybook in his work-roughened hands. Mary Thompson, a sturdy young woman with tired but gentle eyes, is close by. She perches on the edge of the bed, which by day doubles as a couch when covered with a quilt, and mends a tear in William's only other pair of trousers. Her needle glints each time it passes through the fabric, catching the golden light of the oil lamp that sits atop a repurposed crate serving as their table. The lamp's flame is turned low, but it's enough to illuminate this little domestic tableau with a soft, steady glow. Mary's fingers move deftly, despite the long day of chores and piecework sewing she's done to earn a bit of extra coin. She listens as John's deep and calm voice spins a bedtime tale for their children, a faint smile playing on her lips as familiar words fill the air. Tonight's story is one the family knows by heart, an old English folk tale about a kind woodcutter who helped a fairy in the forest and was rewarded with a wish. The children have heard it many times, yet they still gaze at the illustrations on the worn pages with wonder. Bess's eyelids droop as she sucks her thumb, comforted by the vibration of her father's voice in his chest. William fights sleep just enough to see the story through. He loves the ending where the woodcutter uses his wish to ensure his family never goes hungry. John reads slowly, savoring the time with his little ones. He enunciates the words with gentle drama, even changing his voice for different characters, a high, wavering tone for the fairy, a deep, kindly rumble for the woodcutter, drawing soft giggles from William and Bess at the right moments. As he reads, "And so the fairy granted him a single wish for his kindness," he feels Bess's head grow heavy against his shoulder. Glancing down, he sees her dark lashes resting on her cheeks. By the time he reaches the happy conclusion, "And they lived in peace and plenty all their days," William too has slid into the realm of sleep, a soft toy horse clutched in his small hand, loosening its way to his lap. John closes the threadbare book softly and presses a kiss to each child's head. Bess's curls tickle his nose. "Good night, my wee ones," he whispers. Carefully he stands, cradling Bess in one arm and scooping up the half-asleep William with the other. The children stir, but do not fully wake as their father carries them the few steps to the family bed. Mary sets aside her mending and rises to turn down the covers. Together, in a well-practiced maneuver, they lay the children down on the bed's one firm mattress. Mary tucks the warm quilt, patched with many colors from old clothing scraps, up under the children's chins. William instinctively rolls toward his sister, throwing a tiny arm over her. They snuggle into the shared pillow, breathing softly in unison. Mary leans down and brushes her lips against each child's forehead, murmuring a quiet blessing. "Sleep tight, loves." She lingers a moment to gently straighten Bess's nightshirt, which has ridden up over tiny feet, then steps back. John and Mary stand side by side for a few breaths, watching their sleeping children with the kind of tender, exhausted love that makes any hardship worth it. In the dim lamplight, the children's features are soft and angelic. William's face, still faintly smudged with a bit of dirt that escaped washing, and Bess's mouth slightly open as she dreams. Mary reaches and squeezes John's hand silently. No words are needed. The look they exchange says everything. Pride in their little family and relief that another day is done, and done well enough. After a moment, Mary quietly goes to fetch 2 old wooden crates from against the wall. These crates serve as makeshift partitions. She and John set them at the foot of the bed, creating a small separate sleeping area on a straw-filled pallet for themselves. It isn't much in the way of privacy, but it will keep them from accidentally disturbing the children when they later crawl under their own blanket. For now, however, they leave the children to their dreams and turn attention to the final tasks of the night. John moves to the rickety table where the oil lamp flickers and gently closes the storybook, setting it aside. He then picks up his tobacco pipe, hesitating a second. He enjoys a few puffs of a pipe before bed to unwind, but he's considerate not to fill the tiny room with smoke while the children sleep. Instead, he cracks open the window just an inch to let in a thread of the cool night air, then steps the few paces to sit by the window. There, on the sill, he strikes a match and lights his pipe. The match flares for a moment, illuminating his face briefly with orange light, then dies as he shakes it out. A curl of sweet-smelling smoke, he can only afford mild shag tobacco, rises and quickly escapes out the propped window into the night. John takes only a few slow draws, mindful and content, gazing out into the darkness beyond. From their high perch, he can see the rooftops of other tenements and a slice of sky. Tonight is mostly clear. He sees a couple of faint stars and the round face of the moon peeking between drifting clouds. The night breeze that enters carries the distant sound of someone singing, perhaps a lonely soul on the street or a group walking home from the public house, softly chorusing a tune. It's indistinct and far off, blending into the night's quiet background. John finds it strangely soothing. He taps his pipe gently to knock out the ash after only a short smoke, deciding he's had enough. The glowing embers at the pipe's bowl tip fade out as he places the pipe aside. Better to save his scant tobacco supply anyway, he thinks. Mary, meanwhile, finishes the last of her mending. She knots the thread and bites it off, inspecting her handiwork. The trousers will hold through many more playtimes now. She folds them and sets them atop a small pile of neatly stacked garments on a chair. The next day's clothes for each member of the family prepared and ready, an important step in every night's routine to avoid frantic searches in the morning. She then goes to the wash basin to perform her own brief bedtime ablutions. The basin's water is cold now, but she uses it nonetheless, dabbing a rag to clean her hands, face, and the back of her neck where sweat from cooking had dried. The cool water makes her shiver and gasp softly, but it feels good to wash away the day's grime. John comes over and follows suit, splashing some water on his face and scrubbing the back of his neck with a small piece of soap. They share the towel to dry their faces, smiling quietly at one another as they do. By now, the oil lamp's flame is down to a mere glimmer. The room is mostly lit by the ruddy glow of the stove's coals and a faint silver shaft of moonlight coming through the window. Mary carefully turns the wick down further, then with a gentle puff of breath, she extinguishes the lamp. Darkness enfolds the room, broken only by those two gentle light sources. In that dimness, John navigates to latch the window again, keeping out the deeper night chill now that he's finished with his pipe. Mary tiptoes to the bed and crawls onto the pallet at its foot that they've prepared for themselves. It's essentially a thick blanket laid over straw mats, but after a long day, it is comfort enough. John joins her, and together they settle down, drawing another worn blanket up over their shoulders. The crates shield them somewhat from the draft of the window, and also create a small nook of semi-privacy. They lie facing each other in the dark, their heads close together, whispering the last words of the night. "Did you see the way Will was pretending not to be sleepy?" Mary breathes with a soft chuckle. John grins, his teeth just barely visible in the gloom. Aye, he was trying so hard, but the story won out. Mary nods, reaching a hand to smooth John's brow lovingly. She notices a new ink stain on the cuff of his shirt, evidence of his clerking labor. Making a mental note to scrub it out tomorrow, she instead says gently, "Thank you for reading to them. It's their favorite part of the day." John closes his hand over hers. "Mine too," he admits. A quiet contentment fills them. Despite the struggles, moments like these reaffirm why they work so hard. They exchange a few more murmured hopes for tomorrow. If weather is fair, Mary might take the children to the park while John is at work. John mentions he'll try to bring home a small treat from the bakery if he's paid his overdue wages. Little plans, simple dreams. Mary suppresses a yawn, not wanting to cut this precious quiet time short, but John notices and chuckles softly. "Time for sleep now," he whispers. Mary hums in agreement. From the top of the bed comes a soft, sleepy sigh from one of the children, perhaps William turning in his dream or Bess finding a comfortable spot. Both parents instinctively pause to listen, ensuring their little ones remain asleep. Satisfied, Mary and John adjust their own blanket, curling close together for warmth. John drapes an arm around Mary's waist. It's a tight fit on the small pallet, but neither minds. Being pressed close just means they feel each other's reassuring presence. Mary offers one last quiet prayer into the darkness, a habit she keeps each night, thanking Providence for watching over them and asking for another safe day tomorrow. John, eyes closed and breathing slowing, adds a gentle amen, barely more than an exhale. From somewhere in the building comes a faint sound of a door closing and a brief creak of the ceiling boards overhead. A neighbor, perhaps, settling in, or a late worker finally turning in. The couple remains still, listening as the noise subsides. Within moments, that small disturbance fades, and all is still again, the entire tenement hushed in collective slumber. They each whisper, "Good night" to each other. John's voice is a sleepy rumble, Mary's a soft sigh. In the darkness, She nestles against his chest, and he presses a kiss to her hair. Down the length of the room, in the children's bed, William sighs once in his sleep, and little Bess makes a soft noise, perhaps the echo of a dream, but neither wakes. Within the one-room flat, as in so many others across London, the routines of night have brought a sense of calm and safety. The hardships of the day are, for a time, set aside. The entire Thompson family, 2 parents and 2 young children, slumber together in their own small corner of the city, unified in rest. The night envelops their tiny home, and the gentle rhythm of their breathing rises and falls in harmony with the quiet city around them. Across town, in the west end of the city, on a genteel residential street lined with trees and elegant townhouses, another household moves through its own peaceful evening ritual. Inside one of these grand homes, 3 stories of warm brick with tall windows, Mr. Henry Whitaker and his wife, Anna, are winding down after a sophisticated dinner. The dining room, with its mahogany table and glittering crystal candelabra, now sits empty, save for a pair of servants quietly clearing the last dishes. The remains of a fine meal, a roast joint, boiled potatoes, and a half-eaten pudding, are being efficiently whisked away to the kitchen by the butler and a footman. The silverware clinks gently as it's gathered, but otherwise the house is hushed and orderly. Upstairs in the drawing room, the Whitakers enjoy a final hour of gentle leisure before bedtime. The drawing room is a spacious, comfortably furnished parlor adorned with patterned wallpaper, plush velvet settees, and heavy embroidered drapes that have been drawn closed against the night. A marble fireplace at one end holds a crackling fire that bathes the room in a soft golden glow. Above it, a grand mirror reflects the cozy scene. The gas wall sconces are turned low, their flame jets humming faintly and casting a steady light over the oil paintings and well-stocked bookcases. Mrs. Anna Whitaker sits at the rosewood piano in the corner, her fingers gliding softly over the keys as she plays a quiet nocturne. The melody is slow and soothing, filling the room with a lullaby-like ambiance. She wears a flowing satin tea gown of deep blue, a more relaxed garment than the structured dinner dress she wore earlier. Freed from the stiff corset and heavy bustle, she can finally take full, deep breaths. Her dark hair, which had been elaborately pinned up for dinner, is now let down to cascade over her shoulders in loose curls, an intimate luxury she allows herself in these private hours with only her husband and close household around. As she plays, she sways slightly with the music, eyes half closed, clearly at ease. Mr. Henry Whitaker lounges in a high-backed armchair near the fire, one leg crossed over the other. He has exchanged his formal evening tailcoat for a velvet smoking jacket of burgundy, and in one hand he holds a small glass of amber brandy, the quintessential nightcap to end the day. In the other hand rests an open book of poetry. He isn't reading at the moment, though. Instead, he's listening fondly to the piano's gentle song while gazing into the fire. The rhythmic crackle of burning logs and the soft piano notes intertwine, creating a harmony of comfort. On a side table between the couple stands a delicate porcelain tea set that the butler arranged moments ago. Thin wisps of steam curl from a teapot spout, Anna's chamomile tea steeping, while beside it, Henry's brandy decanter catches the firelight. Everything in the room speaks of calm refinement, from the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall to the subdued palette of the furnishings in the flickering gaslight. As Anna finishes the piece, her fingers stilling on the final chord, Henry closes his book gently, marking his place with a ribbon. "That was lovely, my dear," he says quietly, not wanting to shatter the tranquility with too loud a voice. Anna smiles and lets the last notes fade. She rises from the piano bench and crosses the room to join her husband, her satin gown rustling softly over the Persian rug. Henry pats the arm of his chair invitingly, but instead Anna chooses the settee just opposite him, sinking gracefully into its cushions. The fire's glow lights her face as she pours herself a cup of the chamomile tea, its floral fragrance drifting up. Henry watches her with contentment. This hour of the evening, just them together in quiet companionship, is often the sweetest part of his day. After the obligations of running his business and the formalities of dinner, it's a relief simply to be at home, at peace. The couple speaks in low, unhurried tones. They chat about small, pleasant things. The letter they received from Anna's sister in the countryside, and how the autumn roses in the garden bloomed late this year. Henry mentions a humorous anecdote from his office earlier that day, making Anna chuckle softly behind her teacup. These gentle exchanges float between them like soft feathers, light and comforting. On the other side of the parlor, the butler, Mr. Hughes, has finished his duties for the evening. After laying out the tea service and ensuring the fire is well fed, he withdrew to allow the Whitakers privacy. Now he stands just outside the drawing room door in the hallway, exchanging a nod with the footman who helped clear dinner. Their work for the night is nearly done. With practiced efficiency, Mr. Hughes glides through the house, performing his nightly checklist. Front door locked and bolted, check. Ground floor windows latched, check. Silver cabinet secured, check. Each item completed gives him a sense of orderly closure to the day. Satisfied, he finally allows himself to retire. Mr. Hughes makes his way to his small but comfortable butler's pantry, a tidy little room off the main hall where he keeps the household ledgers and his personal cot. In the quiet pantry, he pours himself the slightest measure of port from a private decanter, a humble reward for the long day, and sits for a moment at his desk. By the light of a single candle, he notes in a logbook any matters to attend to tomorrow, a reminder to polish the silver urn, a note that the coal delivery is due. That done, he savors a single sip of the sweet wine and lets out a long breath. The house is silent around him. Knowing all is secure under his watch gives him a private sense of pride. When his modest indulgence is done, the butler douses his candle and settles onto the narrow fold-out bed in the pantry corner. He'll be up again at dawn to unlock doors and boil water for the household, but for now, he rests in well-earned peace. Down below stairs in the kitchen, the last of the staff are concluding their day's labors as well. The spacious kitchen that bustled with activity hours ago during dinner prep is now mostly quiet. The cook has long since gone up to her room, but the kitchen maid, young Mary, remains. She stands at the large sink, her sleeves rolled up past her elbows, hands immersed in warm, soapy water as she scrubs the final pan. Her arms ache from scouring, and her eyelids droop, but the promise of her straw mattress bed in the attic spurs her on to finish. The kitchen smells of soap and the faint remnants of roasted meat. A single oil lamp on the table casts just enough light for Mary to see by. Once the pan is clean and set to dry, she wipes down the wooden counters, hangs her damp dishcloth neatly, and lets out a long, tired breath. In the quiet, she can hear the muffled melody of the piano from the drawing room above coming to an end, and the soft murmur of voices. It brings a small smile to her lips. She likes hearing the distant sound of music. It makes her feel less alone as she works. Mary takes the oil lamp in one hand and a crust of bread she saved from dinner in the other, nibbling it to fend off her hunger until morning. With careful steps, she ascends the narrow back staircase reserved for servants, the lamp lighting the steep wooden steps just ahead of her feet. Each step up into the attic feels heavier than the last at this late hour. At the top of the stairs, tucked under the eaves, is the small room Mary shares with the other housemaid, Ruth. Mary pushes open the door gently. Inside, the air is cool. No fire warms this little space, and the single tiny window is cracked open slightly to prevent stuffiness. Ruth is already there, sitting on the edge of their shared bed in her plain cotton nightdress, darning a tear in her apron by the light of a nearly spent candle. She looks up and smiles wearily as Mary enters. "All done?" Ruth whispers. Mary nods, closing the door behind her. The two maids exchange only a few quiet words. They are both exhausted, and words are not needed to acknowledge the mutual relief that the day's work is behind them. Mary quickly changes out of her work dress, shivering as the cold attic air brushes her skin, and slips into her own faded nightgown. The two young women blow out their candle and lamp, and then clamber under the heavy blanket of their bed. They lie back to back, each grateful for the warmth of the other in the chill. Mary pulls the covers up to her ears and closes her eyes, saying a silent prayer of thanks that no midnight call bells, the dreaded ringing contraptions in the halls that would summon them if the master or mistress needed something, have disturbed them tonight. In minutes, the maids are asleep, breathing softly in unison as the hush of the attic envelops them. Meanwhile, on the floor below, Mrs. Whitaker sets her empty teacup down and glances at the clock on the mantel. The hands show a bit past 10. "We should think about going up soon," she says gently to her husband. Henry follows her gaze to the clock and nods. Yes, it's about that time. Neither of them is truly in a rush. Rising early is not as critical for them as it is for their servants or the likes of Thomas or Emily. Nonetheless, they value their rest and prefer to retire at a reasonable hour. Before they leave the comfort of the drawing room, Henry stands and crosses to a tall cabinet in the corner. From a lower drawer, he pulls out a flat leather case. "Shall we check on the little ones before bed?" he asks with a tender smile. Anna's face brightens at the suggestion. The case contains a magic lantern, an early projector with painted glass slides, a source of endless delight for their two children at bedtime. Henry lights a small interior lamp of the device and selects a glass slide that shows a simple scene of a mother goose leading goslings. With the lamp lit, he carries the magic lantern carefully as the couple quietly ascend the grand staircase up to the nursery. On the landing outside the nursery door, The governess and Miss Caroline Dunn awaits them, having heard their footsteps. She is a genteel young woman employed to educate and care for the Whitaker children. This evening, as on most nights, she has overseen the children's bedtime routine while the parents dined. Miss Dunn is dressed in a modest high-collared day dress, now slightly wrinkled from the long day. Her brown hair is pinned in a simple bun, and a pair of wire-framed spectacles rests on her nose. She greets Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker with a soft smile and a whisper. They've been asking if you would come. Inside the nursery, the air is warm and tinged with the sweet scent of bedtime, a mix of clean linen, a hint of baby powder, and the lingering fragrance of a bedtime storybook's pages. The Whitakers' two young children are already tucked into their small beds, the soft glow of a low lamp dancing across their gentle faces. 4-year-old Clara is in her little white nightdress, lying under a pink quilt in her cot, with her beloved rag doll nestled beside her. 7-year-old Edward is in the adjacent bed, clutching his carved wooden toy horse to his chest and fighting sleep as boys often do. At the sight of their parents, both children's faces light up in drowsy excitement. Clara's eyes are heavy, but she reaches out a tiny hand, and Edward pushes himself up on one elbow. "We promised only a minute now," Anna whispers, as she and Henry slip into the room. Henry sets the magic lantern on a low table at the foot of Edward's bed and aims it at the wall. The children watch, entranced, as a gentle beam of light projects the colorful image of the mother goose and goslings onto the wallpaper. In the dim glow, Henry softly narrates a tiny impromptu tale to accompany the picture, something about a goose guiding her babies home to the farm under the moonlight. His voice is low and soothing, and as he speaks, Clara's eyes flutter shut, her little hand still resting in her mother's. At the other bed, said Edward smiles, the picture reflecting in his wide eyes, but even he cannot suppress a yawn. By the end of the short tale, both children are visibly more at peace, their earlier restlessness gone. Anna leans to kiss Clara's forehead, gently brushing aside a curl of her golden hair. "Sweet dreams, my darling," she whispers. Clara murmurs a half-coherent reply that sounds like "night-night, mama," before sinking fully into sleep. At the other bed, Henry ruffles Edward's hair with a loving hand and tucks the blankets up around his shoulders snugly. "Sleep well, Edward. Dream of brave adventures," he says softly. Edward nods, his eyes already closing as the excitement of the magic lantern fades into dreamy contentment. Miss Dunn stands by, witnessing this tender family moment silently. Her hands are clasped, and she wears a small, appreciative smile. These quiet good nights are a pleasant part of her otherwise often lonely routine. Once the children are settled, she quietly begins to wind the small music box on the dresser, a final lullaby to play after the parents leave. The tinkling notes of Brahms' lullaby begin to twinkle in the background. Henry extinguishes the magic lantern's lamp, removing the slide and closing the case. In the near dark now, the nursery is lit only by a night light, an oil lamp turned down very low, casting a gentle orange dot of light that will burn safely through the night on a high shelf. The parents and governess tiptoe out of the room, leaving the door open just a crack. "Thank you, Miss Dunn," Anna whispers to the governess in the hall, "and good night. Please rest well." Miss Dunn bobs a polite nod. "Good night, madam." "Good night, sir," she says softly. Henry offers her a kind smile and adds, "You've earned a good rest. See you in the morning." With that, Miss Dunn picks up a candlestick she left on a side table and retreats to her own small adjoining room for the night. The governess's room is just down the corridor, a modest chamber that doubles as the schoolroom by day. Its furnishings are simple: a narrow bed, a writing desk stacked with primers and copybooks, and a single armchair by the window. Miss Dunn closes her door and exhales, glad to be off duty. She lights her candle from the embers of the small coal stove that keeps her room moderately warm. In the soft glow, she settles at her desk for a few minutes of personal time. From a drawer, she withdraws a half-finished letter to her sister in Manchester and uncaps her ink bottle. Dipping pen to ink, she writes by candlelight, describing briefly the antics of the children that day and how little Clara absolutely refused her milk until a song coaxed her to drink it. Writing these letters home gives Miss Dunn comfort. It's a way to feel connected to her own family, who are miles away. After signing off the letter with affection, she folds it neatly to post on the morrow. Setting the letter aside, she removes her spectacles and rubs her tired eyes. The candle flame wavers slightly, and she realizes just how sleepy she's become. Not bothering with more than a cursory wash from the pitcher and basin on the side table, Miss Dunn changes into her nightdress and heavy woolen robe. She takes a moment to stoke the little stove, adjusting the vent so that a few coals will smolder through the night. Then she slides under her covers and blows out the candle. In the darkness, she allows herself a private luxury. She recalls the soft music Mrs. Whitaker played earlier and imagines it in her mind, using it to lull herself. Within moments, the governess, too, is asleep, dreaming perhaps of the family she will visit on her next holiday, or of playing the very piano downstairs one day when no one is listening. Back in the master bedroom, Henry and Anna Whitaker prepare for bed with the help of their personal attendants. The master suite is an expansive room decorated in calming hues of cream and sage green. A grand four-poster bed dominates the space, its carved oak frame draped with soft ivory bed curtains that can be drawn for warmth and privacy. Right now, those curtains are tied back with silk cords, revealing the plush white coverlet and an array of plump pillows. A low fire burns in the bedroom hearth, lending a gentle heat against the chill that seeps through the old glass panes of the windows. On the bedside tables, twin oil lamps are trimmed low, bathing the room in a subdued golden light. Anna stands on the plush rug before a full-length mirror as her lady's maid, Marjorie, loosens the back laces of her corset. Though Anna had changed into a tea gown earlier, she still wore a light corset beneath it for support. Now it is time for even that to come off. With practiced efficiency, Marjorie unlaces the garment and eases it off her mistress's torso. Anna inhales deeply, relishing the freedom and filling her lungs to comfortable capacity. She slips into a dressing gown, a soft robe of cashmere wool, while Marjorie gathers up the discarded corset and tea gown to hang them properly in the wardrobe. On the other side of the room, Henry is attended by his valet, Stephen. The valet helps him remove his cufflinks and collar studs, placing these small items in a polished wooden tray on the dresser. Henry shrugs off his smoking jacket, and Stephen exchanges it for a striped cotton nightshirt held open and ready. Once Henry pulls the nightshirt over his head and it falls to his knees, Stephen gently brushes the day's specks of dust from the master's discarded clothes and hangs up the trousers and jacket. The valet then disappears into Henry's adjoining dressing room briefly and returns with a warming pan, a metal pan filled with hot coals, clamped shut and attached to a long wooden handle. In smooth motions, Stephen slides the warming pan between the sheets of the master bed, moving it around to chase away any chill lingering in the fine linen bedding. A soft warmth spreads in its wake. The valet then closes the pan and removes it, careful not to let any ash spill. Marjorie, having finished with her mistress's wardrobe, approaches Anna with a silver brush. She proceeds to brush out Anna's long hair, gentle strokes that catch the firelight and send a soothing sensation across Anna's scalp. The lady sighs appreciatively. It's a nightly ritual she adores, the brush making its way from crown to tip, over and over, perhaps 100 strokes, until her hair shines and any tangles of the day are smoothed. As Marjorie finishes, she loosely plats Anna's hair into one long braid to keep it from knotting during sleep. "Thank you, Marjorie. That will be all for tonight," Anna says softly, meeting the maid's eyes in the mirror with a kind expression. Marjorie smiles, gives a polite bob of a curtsy, and steps back. Stephen likewise receives a nod of thanks from Henry. The two servants depart the master bedroom quietly, leaving the Whitakers alone in the gentle quiet. Henry goes to each oil lamp and turns the key to extinguish it, plunging the room into near darkness. Only the glow of the fire remains, casting a dim amber light on the walls and ceiling. Anna walks to the window and peeks behind the heavy drape for a moment. The glass is cold to her touch as she places a hand on it. Outside, their street is calm and still. The gas lamps along the pavement burn steadily, little halos around each flame. The silhouette of the tree branches gently sways in a light breeze. Across the way, she notes the last light in a neighbor's window has just gone out. Satisfied that all is well in their world, she lets the drape fall back into place and latches the window securely for the night. The couple then climbs into their high bed, the mattress soft with down and wrapped in fine cotton sheets that carry the faint scent of lavender sachets used in the linen closet. They lie side by side, sinking into the luxurious bedding. Henry lets out a contented groan as his body fully relaxes for the first time all day. Anna turns on her side to face him, and in the dim firelight they share a few last whispered remarks, sweet, drowsy fragments of conversation. They speak about how peaceful the children looked, and Henry jokes that he nearly fell asleep himself while telling the goose story. Anna quietly laughs, reaching over to squeeze his hand under the covers. They agree how grateful they are for such a quiet, pleasant evening. Finally, their voices trail off. Henry plants a gentle goodnight kiss on Anna's forehead. "Good night, my love," he murmurs. "Good night," she replies softly, already on the edge of dreams. With a final glance at the dwindling fire and ensuring the fireguard screen is in place, Henry settles onto his back and closes his eyes. The faint aroma of his brandy lingers in the air, mixing with the lavender and the subtle perfume of Anna's rose-scented cold cream on her skin. In the quiet darkness of the master bedroom, the only sounds are the slow, even breaths of husband and wife as they drift towards sleep, and the soft tick of a small carriage clock on the mantel marking the seconds. The Whitaker household, from the Masters in their grand bed to the scullery maid in her attic cot, now rests. All the rituals, from the grand and elegant to the simple and humble, have been completed, and a gentle silence blankets the home. Outside on the street, night has deepened toward midnight. A lone Metropolitan Police constable makes his rounds along the footpath, his boots making a measured click on the cobblestones. He carries a bullseye lantern, which emits a focused beam ahead of him, and occasionally he swings it to scan the doors and alleyways out of routine caution. The gas street lamps provide a gentle illumination, so he mostly keeps the lantern shuttered, only opening it when he wants to peer into a particularly dark recess. As he walks, he hums a tuneless melody under his breath, part habit to keep himself company, and part signal to any would-be mischief makers that a policeman is about. But the street is calm and almost empty. The constable passes the Whitakers' townhouse and glances up out of instinct. He notes the dim glow of the dying fire through a gap in the curtains of an upstairs window, but no movement. Likely the household has gone to bed. He tries the front gate latch and finds it secured. Satisfied, he moves on. As he passes a narrow alley, a lean, stray dog emerges from the shadows, tail wagging hesitantly. The constable clicks his tongue softly and offers a friendly hand. The dog pads closer, and from his pocket the constable produces a small crust of bread saved from his supper. "Here you go, boy," he whispers, crouching to gently toss the morsel. The grateful animal snaps it up and gives a quiet thump of its tail against the cobbles. The policeman rubs the dog's head briefly, the encounter a welcome companionship in the lonely hour. With a final pat, he sends the dog trotting along on its own nightly patrol. The constable straightens and continues down the lane. A gentle wind rustles the fallen leaves along the curb. In the distance, the deep bell of Big Ben at Westminster begins to chime the hour. The constable pauses in his walk to count the bells, 1, 2, 3, and on until 12, midnight. The constable takes a moment to look around at the silent street. From this vantage, he can see the faint outline of the city's skyline, the shadowy dome of St. Paul's Cathedral far off to the east, and the spire of a nearby church pointing up at a sky sprinkled with stars. Not far to the south, the Thames lies in darkness except for glints of reflection from a few riverside lamps. Its broad waters glide silently, carrying the city's secrets out to sea. A gauzy mist is forming above the river and seeping into the streets, wrapping distant gas lamps in pale halos. As the final peal of Big Ben fades, the great city around him lies in a rare moment of near total repose. Under the domed sky, a few stars peek through the haze and flicker above rooftops. Most shutters are closed. Most chimneys have only thin wisps of smoke trailing now from banked fires. The constable hears the echo of a horse's hooves on a far-off street, perhaps a lone, handsome cab conveying a last passenger home. The sound grows louder for a brief moment, then diminishes as the cab turns a corner into another avenue. A faint clatter of wheels follows, and then dissipates, leaving the street wrapped in quiet once more. In an alley nearby, something stirs by a dustbin. Two glowing eyes catch a glint of lamplight. A stray tabby cat emerges, leaping lightly from a fence post, down to the cobbles. The cat slinks across the constable's path, pausing to examine him with aloof indifference. He tips his helmet in a playful salute to the creature. "Off hunting, are we?" he murmurs. The cat gives a silent flick of its tail and slips away under a gate into a back garden, drawn by some intriguing rustle or scent. The policeman chuckles softly to himself, watching it disappear. He knows that come these late hours, cats become the true owners of the streets, prowling, scavenging, and slipping through shadows on silent paws. The constable resumes his patrol, eventually turning the corner and vanishing from sight beyond the glow of the last lamp on the lane. Now the residential street lies in deep tranquility. Gaslights cast their steady light, illuminating the edges of the road and the sleepy facades of buildings. A soft fog has begun to settle, lending halos around the lamps and a dewy sheen to the pavement. In the silence, one might hear the tiny drip of condensation from an iron lamp post, or the gentle flutter of a night moth drawn to the lamp's flame. Behind one of the shuttered shop fronts, on a poorer street not far away, in the small rooms above a chimney sweep's workshop, a young apprentice named Sam finds his rest. The workshop itself is dark and cold at this hour, but in a cramped scullery at the back, adjacent to the kitchen hearth, Sam lies curled up on a makeshift bed of old blankets on the floor. He is a slight boy of maybe 10 years, with smudges of soot still visible on his small face, even after hastily scrubbing it in a basin before bedtime. The day's labor of climbing flues and brushing chimneys has left him utterly exhausted. After a simple supper of bread and onion soup provided by his master's kindly wife, the boy could barely keep his eyes open. He had nodded off briefly by the kitchen fire while the mistress mended one of his shirts, and she had gently guided him to his little bed, tucking the blankets around his shoulders. Now the kitchen fire is reduced to low embers, but they cast a gentle warmth into the scullery where Sam sleeps. The faint red glow illuminates the child's face, which in repose looks peaceful, freed of the usual worry and weariness he carries by day. At his feet, atop the blankets, lies the household's calico cat. No sleek stray, but a well-fed mouser who has decided that this boy is her chosen companion for the night. She is curled in a tight ball, purring faintly, sharing the warmth of the blankets and coals. Earlier, as Sam drifted off, he had smiled drowsily to find the cat nestling against him. He'd reached out a tiny hand to stroke behind her ears until sleep overtook him fully. In the dim hush of the kitchen, the only sounds are the rhythmic purr of the contented cat and Sam's soft breathing. A single candle was left burning on the table for a bit of light, but its flame has just guttered out, the last of the wax pooling and solidifying. A thin wisp of smoke from the snuffed wick curls upward before vanishing. The darkness here is gentle, though, a darkness alive with comfort. The remaining heat from the stove, the familiar smells of ashes, and a lingering trace of soup, and the softness of the cat by Sam's feet. As the boy sleeps, perhaps his dreams carry him far from the narrow chimneys he cleans. Maybe he dreams of running in open fields under a bright sun, or of a memory from early childhood, his mother's face or a song she once sang. Or maybe he dreams simply of reaching the rooftops and touching the stars he sometimes glimpses when he climbs out of a chimney top. Whatever the content, his small face remains serene, eyebrows occasionally flickering, but no sign of distress. He unconsciously snuggles deeper into his cocoon of blankets, drawing one up under his chin with a little sigh. All across the great city of London, similar scenes play out behind closed doors and drawn curtains. The wealthy slumber in canopied beds with downy pillows. The working folk rest on straw mattresses or cots. Children doze in cradles, and siblings huddle together for warmth under worn quilts. In tiny attic rooms, in cellar dwellings, in lodging houses and estates alike, nearly everyone has yielded to the velvet embrace of the night. The diverse routines, so varied by class and circumstance, have all led to this common human necessity of sleep. Outside, the final hour grows ever quieter. The last pub in the area has long since closed, its lights out and doors bolted. The clatter of a distant factory shift change that might have sounded earlier in the evening is absent now. Factories lie dormant until pre-dawn workers return. Occasionally, a faint noise punctuates the stillness. A baby's brief cry in some nearby lodging, quickly hushed by a tired mother, or the scurry of a rat in the alley, perhaps watched by one of the vigilant stray cats. But these are merely footnotes in the silence. The city's vast presence seems subdued, almost as if it, too, sleeps. The River Thames, not far off, flows with a muted hush under the moonlight, its waters carrying the reflections of a few harbor lights. The grand clock at Westminster has finished its midnight chime and will not sound again until the quarter hour, leaving a span of pure quiet. Even the air feels stiller, as though holding its breath. In this tranquil moment, anyone awake to witness it might feel a profound sense of peace and unity with all the souls at rest around them. Under the same sky, rich and poor alike find refuge in the same healing darkness. In the grand chambers of Buckingham Palace, and in the humblest of rookeries, in stately mansions and crowded tenements alike, night levels all distinctions. The royal palaces and the meanest alleys are cloaked in the same quiet and soothed by the same moonlight. Even within the hushed ward of a charity hospital, a lone night nurse makes her gentle rounds by lamplight. Miss Ada Franklin moves slowly down a row of narrow cots, each occupied by a sleeping patient. The large ward is dim and calm, high windows let in slivers of moonlight that mingle with the warm glow of Ada's handheld oil lamp. The usual daytime sounds of groans and footfalls, clinking medicine bottles, and doctors' clipped voices are absent. In their place reigns a deep midnight quiet, broken only by the occasional soft cough or sigh of a patient and the muffled ticking of the great hall clock at the end of the ward. Ada pauses at each bedside, her sensible low-heeled shoes making hardly a sound on the polished floorboards. She checks a young man's forehead for fever. Tonight it's cool and dry, and she permits herself a small, relieved smile. In the next bed, an elderly woman sleeps with her mouth slightly open, her breathing eased by the laudanum draught given earlier. Ada gently adjusts the blanket that has slipped off the woman's thin shoulders, tucking it snugly around her. "There we are, dear," she murmurs inaudibly. On she goes, tending to each in turn. The ward is long and cavernous, but only half full. The recent weeks have been mercifully light. At the far end, a child stirs in her cot, whimpering in a dream. Ada is at her side in a moment, setting her lamp on the small table and bathing the girl's brow with a damp cloth kept cool by the night air. The child settles, her whimpering fading as Ada hums a fragment of a lullaby under her breath. Satisfied that the little one is peacefully asleep again, Ada lifts her lamp and continues on. Beside an open window, she stops for a moment to breathe in the fresh night air. Hospital wisdom these days encourages ventilation. Bad air is the enemy of health, the matrons insist. So a few upper panes are tilted open. A gentle breeze carries the clean chill of the outside into the ward, dissipating any sickly odors. Ada gazes out into the courtyard garden below, where the silhouettes of rose bushes and an old oak stand quiet under the moon. For a brief moment, the nurse allows her mind to drift. She thinks of her own bed in the tiny dormitory upstairs and looks forward to her shift ending at dawn. She imagines curling up under her quilt just as the city awakens, sleeping while others toil, opposite to most, but a necessary sacrifice in her calling. A faint moan draws her back to duty. She turns and approaches a middle-aged man with a bandaged arm who has shifted in discomfort. Ada checks his pillow, plumping it slightly, and the man's face relaxes again. With experienced efficiency, she notes the time on a hanging wall clock, nearly 3 o'clock, and marks a couple of observations in the ward's record book with a pencil she keeps pinned at her apron. The scratch of lead on paper is soft and rhythmic. Her circuit complete, Ada returns to the nurse's station at the center of the ward. Just a wooden desk with a few neatly arranged vials and ledgers. She turns down the lamp wick there to conserve oil. Leaving the room in near darkness, save for moonlight and the low orange glow of a few coals in the far hearth. Taking a seat, she pours herself a cup of cool water from a pitcher and sits vigil, eyes moving calmly over the rows of sleeping figures. In the heavy stillness, her own eyelids feel a tug of weariness, but she will not succumb. She clasps her hands and silently recites a prayer she often says during these quiet hours, wishing health and healing upon her charges. All around, the ward remains at peace. The patients rest, their pain eased for now, their bodies given over to recuperative sleep. Ada's presence is a reassuring constant, a guardian of the night in this small corner of the city where suffering has, for the moment, abated. In the silence, she can almost hear the collective breath of the slumbering ward rise and fall, a gentle rhythm that lulls even her anxious thoughts. She knows that come morning, the halls will stir with activity again. New admissions, doctors, rounds, the clatter of basins, and the murmur of treatment. But until then, she will keep watch in this soft, healing quiet. The nurse takes a final sip of water and adjusts her shawl against a slight draft. A distant church bell chimes 3 times. Ada leans back in her chair, lamp in hand, and continues her vigil through the remaining hours of the night. In the lamplit ward, under her care and the grace of night, the patients sleep on, each breath knitting up their fractured strength, each heartbeat guided gently into the next, carrying them toward the hope of dawn. In another modest lodging house on the city's east end, 2 young women prepare for bed after a grueling workday at the textile mill. Sisters, they share a tiny attic room with a low ceiling that forces them to stoop as they move about. The walls are plain plaster, stained by years of coal soot, and a single dormer window looks out over rooftops where factory chimneys stand dark and silent until dawn. A faint glow from a street gas lamp seeps through the window, casting just enough light to see by now that their tallow candle has burned low. Maggie, the elder at 20 years, sits on the edge of their straw mattress, slowly brushing out her long auburn hair. With each stroke of the wooden brush, she winces slightly. Her shoulders ache from lifting heavy bobbins all day, and her fingers are nicked from the spinning machines. Her younger sister, Clara, just turned 17, kneels by a basin on the floor, rinsing out a kerchief blackened with factory dust. The water in the basin is murky gray. Even after washing face and hands, a faint smudge of soot lingers on Clara's cheek, which Maggie reaches over to gently rub away with her thumb. "All right then," Maggie murmurs, giving Clara an encouraging half-smile. Clara nods, exhaustion evident in the droop of her slender shoulders. They speak very little. There is an unspoken agreement to preserve the quiet comfort of the night. Words are not needed to communicate their mutual fatigue and relief to be home, however humble that home may be. Clara stands and wrings out the kerchief, hanging it on a peg to dry. She shivers slightly in the cool attic air, clad only in her thin cotton shift. Maggie notices and draws a knitted shawl around Clara's shoulders. It's a shawl their mother made years ago, one of the few keepsakes they have from home. Clara pulls it close and offers a grateful smile. Despite their weariness, there is tenderness in these small gestures. From below, the muffled sounds of the lodging house drift up the narrow stairwell. A cough from an old tenant in a distant room, the clank of someone stoking a dying fire, a baby's brief cry quickly comforted by its mother. Each noise fades swiftly, absorbed into the general hush. The sisters feel a sympathetic connection to these unseen neighbors. All of them are workers, sharing the same hours of labor and rest, each ending the day in a personal ritual of winding down. Maggie and Clara finish their simple preparations. They have no night clothes to change into. They will sleep in their cleanest petticoats and blouses. Clara unlaces her worn boots and sets them by the wall, and Maggie does the same. The wooden floorboards are cold under their bare feet as they tiptoe to the window for a moment. Peering out, they see the courtyard below, blanketed in darkness, and above, a slice of the sky where a few stars bravely shine through the city's haze. Clara lets out a small sigh as she traces a constellation with her eyes, a habit that brings her comfort. Maggie gently places an arm around her sister's waist, and together they stand quietly, allowing the night's tranquility to wash over them. After a minute, Maggie gives Clara's shoulders a soft squeeze. "Time to sleep, love," she whispers. They pad back to their mattress on the floor, just a sack of straw with a faded quilt. It isn't much, but it is warm enough when they huddle together. They blow out the candle nub, and Maggie helps her sister settle under the quilt before sliding in beside her. In the darkness, Clara nestles close, resting her head on Maggie's arm the way she did when they were little. "Maggie," Clara whispers, barely audible, "will you hum that song, the one Mum used to?" Maggie gently squeezes her. "Of course," she replies, knowing exactly the lullaby her sister means. In truth, Maggie misses their mother dearly too at moments like this. Humming the lullaby is as much a comfort for herself as it is for her sister. Maggie then begins to hum the lullaby their mother used to sing, a slow, comforting tune about a valley at rest. Her voice is very soft, barely more than a breath, but the melody is sweet and familiar. Clara's breathing evens out as she listens. The tension in her body eases. Outside, a church bell subtly tolls the quarter hour, but neither sister stirs at the sound. They are already drifting at the edge of sleep. When Maggie finishes the lullaby, she places a gentle kiss on Clara's brow. "Good night," she whispers, voice almost inaudible. Clara murmurs a drowsy, "Good night, Maggie," in return. Within moments, the younger girl slips into slumber, and Maggie, comforted by her sister's warmth at her side, soon follows. In their little attic, as in so many other corners of the city, the hardships of the day are temporarily forgotten. The sisters sleep soundly, curled up like two dormice in a nest. If they dream, their dreams are quiet and kind, offering respite before the next dawn brings another long day. And above them, the distant stars keep silent watch through the window, shining kindly over the resting city. Not far from the Thames docks, the proprietor of a small riverside tavern finishes his nightly chores in peaceful solitude. The Anchor and Crown had been lively earlier in the evening, sailors swapping yarns, dock workers laughing over pints. But now the common room stands empty and still. Ben Turner, the tavern keeper, moves slowly across the flagstone floor, broom in hand. The oil lamps along the walls have been snuffed out one by one, leaving only a single lantern on the bar, casting long shadows over upturned stools and scrubbed tables. Ben sweeps the last pile of peanut shells and sawdust into his dustpan, the bristles of his broom making a soft whisking sound in the quiet. The rich, familiar smell of spilled ale and pipe smoke lingers in the air, gradually dissipating into the cool night draft coming through the open door. Outside, the alley beyond the threshold is silent and dark, save for the distant lap of the river against the wharf pilings. Ben pauses at the doorframe to breathe in the briny night air and gaze for a moment at the reflection of the waning moon on the Thames. Satisfied that no late straggler is approaching and all is calm, he gently closes and bolts the heavy oak door. Inside, the tavern's hushed. Interior, Ben returns the broom to its corner and wipes his broad hands on his apron. He crosses to the bar where a single candle still burns beside the ledger. By its light, he notes the day's totals, pints drawn, suppers served, his neat figures marking the steady trade. With a tired but content sigh, he closes the book. "Not a bad night," he murmurs to himself, voice carrying softly in the emptiness. From a hook beneath the bar, Ben retrieves a damp rag and begins wiping down the last section of counter. His movements are unhurried and methodical. Each time he wrings the cloth into a bucket, the gentle drip of water echoes slightly. As he works, he finds himself humming an old sea shanty under his breath, a habit picked up from years of catering to sailors. The melody is low and soothing in the quiet room, almost blending with the creak of the settling timbers overhead. Finishing up, Ben blows out the candle on the bar, plunging the room into near darkness. Only the ember in the hearth, nearly out, just a faint red glow amid gray ash, gives any light now. Navigating by memory, Ben walks to the staircase that leads up to his private quarters above. Each step groans familiarly under his weight. At the top, he emerges into a small parlor where his wife already dozes in a rocking chair, a folded bit of mending in her lap and her spectacles dangling from a chain at her neck. She had tried to wait up for him, as she often does, but sleep claimed her, and gently Ben lays a hand on her shoulder. "Lizzie, love," he whispers. She stirs, opening her eyes with a faint smile. "All done, then?" she asks in a voice husky from her nap. Ben nods. "Aye, time for bed." He helps her to her feet. Lizzie pats his arm reassuringly, taking comfort in the end of another long day together. They retire to their modest bedroom just down the hall. Through the single-paned window, the glow of a distant ship's lantern on the river casts a wavering pattern on the ceiling. Ben removes his apron and work shirt, too tired to do more than give his face a cursory rinse in the wash basin. Lizzie extinguishes their lamp, and they ease into bed side by side, the sheets cool against their skin. Downstairs, the tavern lies in darkness, cleaned and prepared for tomorrow's customers. As Ben closes his eyes, he utters a quiet prayer of thanks for the roof over their heads, for the tavern's steady custom, for the calm of the night after the bustle of the day. His wife, already drifting back to sleep, reaches for his hand under the quilt and gives it a gentle squeeze, sharing in that wordless gratitude. In the tavern below and all along the sleeping dockside street, silence reigns. The Anchor and Crown, like the rest of the city, rests until dawn, wrapped in the gentle stillness that only the latest hours of night can bring. At Waterloo Station, normally bustling with the comings and goings of steam trains and throngs of passengers, the midnight hour brings an almost eerie peace. The grand arched train shed is dark except for a few gaslights kept burning for safety, their light glinting off rails that now lie empty and still. The last train departed an hour ago, and the echo of its whistle has long faded. Samuel Hart, a station porter, makes his final round along the platform. His footsteps ring softly against the iron and wooden planks. He checks that all is in order. An abandoned valise was collected earlier. The waiting room fire has been banked for the night, and the telegraph office is shuttered. Satisfied, he closes the heavy station doors, locking out the faint fog that creeps along the deserted streets outside. Within the cavernous station hall, only the distant drip of condensation from the high glass roof and the occasional scurrying of a mouse break the silence. Samuel pauses by a bench to stretch his back. In the stillness, the great clock high on the station wall ticks toward 12:30, each second echoing in the emptiness. A solitary oil lamp near the ticket booth casts long shadows across the tiled floor. As he turns to head to the porter's quarters, Samuel notices the station's resident tabby cat slinking along platform 2. "Good night, old chap," he whispers with a faint smile. The cat responds with a mute blink before leaping down onto the tracks on its own nocturnal patrol. Drawing his coat around him, Samuel retreats to the small porter's room at the edge of the station, a simple space with a cot and a stove faintly aglow. He shuts the door behind him, muffling the tick of the station clock. Soon, he too will catch a few hours of sleep before the first light of dawn brings new activity. In the meantime, the vast station rests, hollow and quiet, a sleeping giant of iron and glass awaiting the new day's first arrival. In a quiet mews, tucked behind a row of townhouses, a handsome cab driver tends to his horse. In the still of the late night, the clatter of the day's hooves and wheels has long subsided, and now the cobbled stable yard lies in darkness, save for the soft glow of a hanging lantern near the stall. Thomas Tom Green, a cabman of 10 years, removes the worn leather harness from his mare Daisy with slow, caring movements. The mare snorts gently, tired but patient, as Tom brushes down her dapple gray coat, still damp in spots from the evening's work. "That's my good girl," he whispers, his voice low and soothing in the silence. Daisy cocks an ear back as if listening, then nickers softly. In the stable, the air is sweet with the scent of hay and the lingering warmth of horseflesh. Outside the stable door, the London streets are nearly silent, just a distant echo of a last carriage on the main road. Tom hangs the harness on a wooden peg and gives Daisy's flank a final pat. She turns her big head toward him, and he rubs the white star on her forehead. Under his rough palm, Daisy's hair is short and bristly, familiar and comforting. From a nearby bucket, Tom scoops a measure of oats and pours it into the horse's feed trough. Daisy immediately begins to crunch the grains contentedly. The rhythmic sound of her munching fills the stable, a homely, reassuring noise that brings a smile to Tom's lined face. He reaches up to adjust the lantern's position, casting a warmer light over Daisy's stall, and checks that her water bucket is full. Satisfied she's settled for the night, he quietly slides the stall door closed. Tom's own lodging is a small loft above the stable, just up a ladder. But before retiring, he steps outside into the cool night for a moment, leaning against the stable door frame to ease the ache in his back. The mews is narrow and enclosed by brick walls. Overhead, the strip of sky is clear and strewn with stars. Tom inhales the crisp air deeply. After hours spent navigating through traffic and crowds, this pocket of calm is a blessing. He thinks of his wife and children asleep in their East End cottage, and makes a mental note to bring home a bit of extra coin this week for the little one's shoes. But that thought drifts gently in his weary mind, neither urgent nor troubling in this tranquil moment. A soft whinny from Daisy calls him back inside. Perhaps she senses his absence. Tom chuckles under his breath. "I'm here, girl. Don't fret," he says as he steps back into the stable. He double-checks the latch on her stall and gives the mare one more affectionate rub on the neck. Daisy has already begun to doze, standing with one hind leg cocked slightly, her eyes half closed. Climbing the wooden ladder to the loft, Tom pulls himself up into his humble quarters, a single room just big enough for a cot, a shelf, and a basin. The wood-framed window is open a crack, letting in the night breeze and the distant sound of a church clock striking one. He removes his cap and jacket, draping them over the foot of the cot, and sits heavily on the mattress. His limbs feel leaden from the long day's drive, but his heart is light. He's earned his rest. Before lying down, Tom reaches to the shelf and pours a bit of water from a jug into a tin cup. He drinks slowly, relishing the cool freshness. Below, Daisy shuffles in her stall, settling her weight. The faint thud of her hoof against straw carries upward. Tom finds comfort in that companionship, man and horse, both finished with the day's labors. He stretches out on the cot at last. Through the loft's tiny window, he can see a sliver of the night sky. As he pulls a rough wool blanket over himself, he offers a simple prayer of thanks for Daisy's strength, for the fares he earned, for the calm of this night. The amen he whispers merges with a deep yawn. Within moments, Tom's eyes drift shut. In the stable below, Daisy lets out a long, contented breath, almost a sigh as she too truly relaxes into rest. The lantern's flame gutters softly, casting dancing shadows that gradually still. The Mews is utterly quiet now, a hidden corner of the city where human and animal alike find respite together. The cabman's gentle snores join the steady breathing of his horse, and under the watch of the slumbering stars above, the little stable falls as deeply asleep as the world outside. As the night wears on toward morning, the vast city remains largely at rest. In the small hours, 2, 3, 4 o'clock, London is as quiet as it ever will be. A few scattered sounds punctuate the silence here and there. The distant rattle of a milkman's cart beginning its early route, the faint clank of a baker down the lane as he kindles his ovens for the first batch of bread, or the far-off toot of a rail yard engine shunting cars in the dark. These noises are gentle and brief, mere murmurings that do not disturb the slumber blanketing streets and homes. Above the rooftops, the sky gradually pales from black to a deep indigo. Stars wink out one by one, retreating before the approach of dawn. A light mist clings to the ground in low-lying alleys and courtyards, softening every silhouette. The lamplighters will emerge again, this time to douse the flames. Indeed, in one sleepy lane, a lamplighter on early duty is already at work, lifting his pole to extinguish the last sputtering gas jet, each small hiss and darkening lamp signaling that the night's reign is nearly done. One by one, across the city, the little globes of light wink out, making way for the coming daylight. It is a realm of softness and pause. If one could drift above the slumbering city at this hour, they would see a patchwork of faint lights and deep shadows, a vast quilt of rooftops and lanes all bathed in a gentle gloom. Here and there a lone light still twinkles, a watchman's lantern on a quiet street, a single attic candle left to burn low, but most windows are dark, drawn curtains hiding scenes of repose. From that silent, airborne vantage, the great metropolis that teemed with noise and life by day now appears tranquil and small, as peaceful as a toy village under a glass dome. Under the same sky, rich and poor alike find refuge in the same healing darkness. In the grand chambers of Buckingham Palace, and in the humblest of rookeries, in stately mansions and crowded tenements alike, night levels all distinctions. The royal capital and the meanest alley are cloaked in the same quiet and soothed by the same moonlight. The bedroom curtains that were drawn hours before begin to pale at their edges as dawn nears. The lone bird who kept vigil on a lamppost now begins to sing, a tentative warbling note that heralds the first hint of sunrise. Its song is answered by another, a street over, and then another, until a gentle chorus of dawn birdsong filters through the quiet streets. This soft music entwines with the thinning shadows, gently nudging the city toward wakefulness. In a short while, light will seep over the horizon, touching the tops of steeples and chimneys, turning the murky Thames to silver. The sleepy milkman will call outside doorsteps, servants will rise to stoke kitchen fires, and children will stir, rubbing their eyes as morning claims the night. London will gradually shrug off its slumbering hush and come to life once more with all its energy and clamor. But for these remaining moments, Victorian London belongs to the night. It is a realm of gentle respite, a time when the city's millions, from the loftiest to the lowliest, share in the balm of rest. The quiet city life, gaslit and meditative, dreaming and at peace, lingers just a little longer, enveloping all in its calming embrace until the first light of dawn finally beckons a new day. But even as the world brightens and stirs, the gentle gifts of the night will not be forgotten. The quiet, the recovery, and the dreams born in these hours will carry into the day. And when evening comes again, Victorian, London will once more surrender to the tender embrace of dusk, repeating the timeless cycle of rest and renewal. Thus, beneath the gaslight and the starlight, Victorian London slumbers on, gathering strength and quietude until the cycle of day and night continues anew. Night gently withdraws its cape, leaving behind a city comforted and ready to wake. All is well, and the city has been gently renewed under the watch of night.